Hello everybody, welcome to the third module of this course. The focus of this module is like the crux of this course because we've done all this research about how micro-entrepreneurs are motivated and develop and network, and so today we're going to look at that and try to understand it. So first of all, what are micro-entrepreneurs? And in a very exceedingly simple way is that they are starting or running a business with 5 or less people. But then we know more things about them. We know, for example, that they involve their families often to help their business. We know they're not just motivated by profit. They will also want to do kind of other things. They do other, usually day jobs that maybe give them health benefits and things like that. And then they do this on the side because they're passionate about it. So we've learned over time a little bit more about these folks, how they differ from the kind of like scale up and growth and profit seeking entrepreneurs. So one of the things we've looked into is whether they find fulfillment, and moreover, like how can they, as through tourism microentrepreneurship, speak to the world about their lives and their culture, all right? And so this is kind of highly theoretical, but it looks at how tourism usually just Disneyfies the local people. It uses them as like exhibits in a museum, and they are just manipulated for the betterment of the industry, not for their own sake, which is really severely problematic because the tourism industry goes to a community and turns the local people into an attraction and uses them whatever way the market wants, and they profit from it and they move on like roving bandits around the world. And so that's what we're trying to avoid. The interesting thing is that we found that tourism microentrepreneurship allows the locals actually to carve out some agency, earn income, and control tourism. So instead of protecting the locals from tourism, what we have found is that the savviest thing to do is to involve them in tourism microentrepreneurship, because they do this, they don't need to ask anybody's permission. The tourists want to have local experiences. They want to hear the unscripted truth from the locals, so the locals get to speak. They get a stage where they can kind of resist the system and kind of turn the things around a little bit, okay? So this picture has captured me many years ago, and I use it very often. It shows a dancer, Aborigine dancer in Australia, the tourist over there looking at a show, and he is in the backstage behind the curtain, minding his business, painted like his ancestors, certainly offending his culture and his, gods and stuff, and he's doing this for money, sacrificing himself, enslaved by tourism. All right, so we're trying to explore the opposite of this. So one important thing as we deal with these populations is to understand their motivations, and there's 4 that have emerged through our many studies. One of them is that they want to set the record straight. They want to speak about their people for themselves. You can see that quote at the bottom of the slide. They don't want this, professors and stuff to tell their story. They want to be the ones to tell their story. All right. So we've done this in many cultures, in many countries, and this comes out very strongly. Another thing is that there's a lot of people that take on the responsibility of passing on traditional skills or knowledge or culture and things. And so what they want to do is to keep that tradition alive, to help it survive the time. And so, for example, a basket maker in Portugal, where I'm from, is the only basket maker in that village. But 30 years ago there would be 25 basket makers in that village, and he was just one of them. But when he wants to teach that to the next generation, they're not interested, because you can buy baskets in Walmart, the Portuguese Walmart, and so there's no use for that skill. So they become involved in microentrepreneurship. In tourism, they make baskets and stuff so that they keep it alive, and they have the hope that the younger generation can make some money by doing these traditional things. So they're like shouldering the burden of maintaining a tradition through tourism microentrepreneurship. This is a fascinating find. A lot of the microentrepreneurs have difficult lives. They don't have a lot of resources. They don't maybe have a fulfilling and rewarding career. They're doing some job that's repetitive and low pay, low skill, and that's very tough for them, and they are maybe isolated. But when they do tourism microentrepreneurship, when they share tours and visits with tourists, they're not saying, oh, poor me, poor me. They are always disclosing their difficulties, but they pair it with these the meaning of life kind of lesson. Like, look at me, I don't have much, but I live a meaningful life, and I contribute to my community, and I have a purpose, and I am happy. And you can see that in some of the quotes that I have shared with you over there. So some folks in tourism worry about what we call poverty porn. How tourism going to poor people, taking pictures of barefoot people and stuff like that. But that kind of protection, again, is actually counterproductive. If things are done well, somebody that's not high income, they can find dignified ways to share, and we have documented that they find dignified ways to share their lack of resources, but in a way that they're comfortable with, and they want the world to see it. And they actually feel sorry for us, the affluent class and urbanites that live in this frenzy life, earning money and burning money, and then we're still not happy, right? So it's kind of cool to see how they use this platform to preach this, more meaningful way of living to us. And then lastly, they're looking for money. They need to earn money. We all need money to live, and they also, these micro-entrepreneurs, they need to have a profitable business of some sort. Generally, though, they articulate this in the way of like to maintain their freedom, to be able to live in a farm, to be able to keep the family centennial farm within the family and not sell, or to be able to continue to be an artist because they can't sell their art pieces very, very expensive for a lot of money. And so they do these workshops on the side so they continue to devote themselves to art and not have to get a job flipping burgers or delivering pizzas or something like that. And some of them is to keep that family flexibility, to be able to be there for their kids, to pick them up, take them here or there. If they had an 8-to-5 job, they would have to, find some other way of living. So they're trying to earn more income so that they can have a life that they like. So that's, just an example again from northern Portugal. This couple, they are subsistence farmers and they are laborers, and they actually receive visitors through our project, and they want to show them how they grow cabbages and they raise pigs and they make wine, and they're proud of all of these skills they have of drawing a livelihood from their land, and they eat healthy food. So you look at that picture, it looks kind of poor, but when people visit them, they are just beaming with pride of all of these things that they have, and the flavor of the tomatoes and the wine that he's holding on his hand. So a lot of our work, and the purpose of your training, is to be able to instill positive behavior on people that need income, and they could tackle these new income opportunity. And one of the theories that has been used to look at this is the theory of self-determination. It was initially studied in the context of encouraging kids to read more. And so what they found is that when people have, in a certain activity, they have autonomy, competence, and relatedness, and we'll look at what that is, then people do things that are helpful to them. But if they live in this alienated life where, they are not autonomous to do what they want, what they do have to do, they're not really good at, and nobody around them seems to care, then people do self-destructive behaviors. So what you are trying to find out, and I'm trying to find out as change agents in this world, is for certain local people to internalize tourism entrepreneurship as something that they can advance their interests if they get involved in it, if they make an effort and do it, okay? And so you can read up on like how at the top of that continuum, it's just stuff we do because we have no choice, and if we don't do those things, we get punished. And the very bottom is the things we do because we like them, and then there's things in the middle. So look it up a little bit, and we'll discuss it in our Zoom class. Okay, and we've studied this now in tourism, with tourism micro-entrepreneurs, and we try to figure out to what extent does doing these things as a small business, to what extent does it affect their self-determination, the sense that they have control over what their lives turn out to be, okay? And in terms of competence, they report that it really helps them a lot, because imagine like the basket maker learned to do the baskets from his grandfather, etc., or father, and then now does them for tourists, and they are competent with it. If they didn't do this, they would work in a shop or in a supermarket or pumping gas or some other job that would be lower skill, and they wouldn't get this sense and the affirmation from others that they're very competent about a specific valued kind of skill. And then autonomy, they can choose what kind of wood to use on the baskets and on their crafts, or if they're giving tours in downtown Raleigh, for example, they can choose which place to stop, which place not to stop. It's unscripted. They're not being told by a boss to do it in a certain way. They have independent to kind of run things the way they want. They can be genuine, right? And then with relatedness, what we are learning from them is that by doing micro-entrepreneurship, by guiding trips and receiving visitors in their farm, etc., they are actually connecting with the world. Otherwise, they are just by default isolated people. And you know, when they start doing this, then their families see them doing something they like, and they think it's very good, and they kind of injects mojo into their lives, and all of these things work out very well. So micro-entrepreneurship can be very frustrating, can be difficult, etc. But we have documented across many subsamples of groups of people that it really helps them have self-determination. The example, this is from field work in South Africa. In this example, maybe not, you know. You see these little kids, you know, from a local tribe next to a national park, and then there's a guy leaning against the wall there. And this is just a bus with tourists, small bus taking them to the airport after they watch the lion and the elephant, and they just want to take a picture with poor African kids, you know. So this is a demeaning activity. They don't even control how much they're charging. They're like skipping school to make a few bucks, you know, standing for a picture and look poor. So micro-entrepreneurship, if it's not done well, it does the opposite of what we described there with self-determination. This kind of activity actually creates a sense of helplessness and dependence. So it can be good, but it has been observed as being good, but it can also be very, very negative. Now, social capital. This is a really, really crucial issue. So social capital relates to the kinds of resources and help and support that somebody can get from their relationships, from the people that they know. And you have three similar descriptions or definitions in this slide, okay? Within that, though, it's kind of interesting to distinguish between those kinds of relationships. We all have some that are bonding, they're kind of strong, they're ties with people that are like us, like our family and friends. And then we have some that are like with other people, ties we have with other people, okay? And so the ones that are bonding, they can be good because you have support, but it can be bad because you're suffocated by that pressure to be supportive to the people like you, okay? And then the bridging ties are usually connecting you with other people. Those other people have other kinds of resources, and they are usually good for you, but you need to work hard at maintaining those relationships. So think about LinkedIn or Facebook, and you have many, many connections, and some are strong and resilient, and they you know, congratulate you for a good grade or for a new degree or something like that, and others don't know that as much. But those other ones are the ones that can give you opportunities that your friends and family wouldn't have. And so an interesting term that for you to kind of consider on is the strength of weak ties. So those, you know, strong ties are family, friends, they're empathetic with you, they support you emotionally. The problem is that the things they know, you probably also know. So they're not going to be a door towards something new. It's the people on that center, darker green circle, right? And then there's these other more peripheral people, and you can see those peripheral people, they have their own strong ties, and that are like them but not like you. So when you know one of these people that are different from you, like a professor from Portugal, you know, now suddenly if you go to Portugal, you can talk to me and I can hook you up with places to visit and people to meet and resources to look at, right? So I'm kind of a weak tie for you. We would have to keep in touch. You need to make an effort for that. But if you do that, then when you have, you know, some thought of going to Europe, then you could rely on me to open up the door to these other things. Okay, so a mix of those is the healthiest way to go. And you should think about that for your micro-entrepreneurs. And micro-entrepreneurs you're going to try to figure out. So we've already studied this a little bit. And generally, the micro-entrepreneurs are pretty isolated. They're, you know, they don't collaborate with each other too much because they're kind of competing with each other. They don't collaborate with weak ties because they're often from the government, and since the micro-entrepreneurs are uncertain if they're legal or not, if they need a permit to sell something and things like that, they just kind of try to stay under the radar. My favorite quote, which is pretty sad, is from this mountain guide. He said, "We lived like peasants during medieval times. We try to eke a living, right? Make a living a little bit, but not want to bring too much attention to ourselves, or the system can come and, ruin us. Like, the farm is receiving visitors and they're not doing it up to code, and then they have to shut down, and then they can't pay their mortgage, they lose their farm. That kind of fear isolates the micro-entrepreneurs more and more. So, but if we do our job right as change agents, we can really make a difference in their lives. And in some conditions, that's going really well. The diagram you see over there with the colorful balls is from fishing guides in the Pamlico Sound of North Carolina. And the bigger the ball is, the more amount of money, the higher amount of money that these people make from fishing tourism. And the connections are when they mention the other names, when they were asked, who do you collaborate with, who supports you? So you can see that some of those people are a little bit more connected and some are more peripheral. And like the blue ball in the center is kind of a catalyst of communication and an influencer of that group. And if you wanted to support this network, you'd want to talk to those 2 or 3 bigger nodes in the middle, those 3 or 4 entrepreneurs, and talk to them, see what kind of needs they have, and then they would disperse the information and advice to the others. In this network, this kind of network, coalitional network, where you see there's like a group to the left and a group to the right, and then there's some people that connect them in the middle, that's kind of a really good design, because then they collaborate with each other a little bit, but they compete with each other, and they're tackling different opportunities. And if there's trust between them, a sense of reciprocity, and a sense of togetherness, we'll have to study the definitions for these, then the network is very healthy and very likely to prosper. Okay? If these things don't exist, then it's a shark tank, essentially. The last slide I have for you is the latest study we've done in terms of like how to support micro-entrepreneurs. You see first, social capital. It all starts there. And it's the zone 1 would be the entrepreneur. This was in the context of farmers, but it can be applied to other contexts as well. But let's just use the example of farmers. Zone 1, social capital, is their connections with local government and support organizations. Zone 2 is with local businesses, restaurants, hotels, shops, and things like that. And Zone 3 is with other farmers. And so we found that the more they have of that, the more self-efficacy they have. So the entrepreneurial self-efficacy is defined as their confidence in themselves to succeed with micro-entrepreneurship. Right? So we found that the more connections they had, the more self-efficacious they were, for the reasons you see on the dashed box. Okay? Because they get like learning from each other, and they get reinforcement from people that they regard as highly. Okay? And then if they have that, then they are more likely to want to be more entrepreneurial. In this case was with their farms. We asked them questions about hosting events and offering weddings and partnering with hotels on packages and things like that. And so we found statistically that when they responded that they had more of these relationships, they were more efficacious, and then as a consequence they were also more invested in their entrepreneurship. That means that if you want to support local micro-entrepreneurs and get them involved in tourism micro-entrepreneurship, one good first step is to help connect them with each other and with key partners. Okay? That's it for this module. I look forward to our class. Bye.